Happy Tuesday after Thanksgiving, everyone. We hope you had a blessed holiday, and we are excited to bring you a re-release. We dug into the vaults of the beginnings of our podcast, and we're bringing you the answers to our most asked questions about teaching homeschool reading. This is from October 16th of 2022. Jenny recorded it. She is a reading specialist who has such a passion for empowering you homeschool moms with strategies to get your kiddos started reading or for your struggling readers. So listen in. And if you would like more help from us, we're inviting you to meet around the well with the other moms in our online homeschool community. We'll be together online tomorrow, Wednesday, December 4th, from 4:30 to 5:30 Eastern Time. To get with us, go to our website, thehomeschoolwell.com. Click Get Community and Weekly Support and bring all of your reading questions, challenges, struggles, successes, whatever you need. Bring it tomorrow to meet with us around the well. In the meantime, get ready for answers to your most asked questions about teaching homeschool reading.
Hello, mamas, and welcome to this episode, Your Reading Questions Answered. In this podcast, we're going to tackle some of the commonly asked questions that parents ask about teaching beginning readers. What to do if your child is resistant to reading? Where should I start with a young child to teach reading and writing? And how to teach those energetic kiddos who are ready to read but just can't sit still for long. Stick around to be empowered so that you can be your child's best teacher. Hey, I'm Jenny Barr.
And I'm Kim Godfrey.
We're friends, former teachers, and homeschool moms ourselves who host the Homeschool Well podcast. We talk about topics that are important to homeschool moms so that you can be your child's best teacher. In today's episode, we're answering commonly asked questions that parents have about teaching reading in their homeschool and teaching beginning readers. And the first question we have today, this was from a member in our community, and it's, my child is resistant to reading. How do I motivate him? It's such a good question. He has no interest in reading at all. And so she was looking for ways to kind of get him interested and get started. We have several ideas that definitely help resistant readers. And I had a child myself that was kind of like this. I had one child who loved to read and then one who was like, I don't really care about it. But there were some things that we did in our homeschools to kind of help move this along if your child really isn't too interested. The first thing that I would do is get a library card and get that boy to the library. There are so many books there and so many options, and it's like a candy store. And so if you just kind of looked around a little bit, you could definitely find some books there. So I would start with the library. And then the next thing I would say is to give that child some control. They obviously feel like putting on the brakes, so they want control over this. With kids like that, I think whenever this comes up, I think it's good to give them choices, knowing that whichever choice they choose, you're okay with either one. With my son, he really didn't want to read, but he loved candy. And no, I did not give him candy all the time. But I said, let's write a book about candy. I bet you could think of lots of different things that we could put in that book. And so we made a book called I Like Candy, and this was by my son, Hayden. And it was just a really quick thing where I just took printer paper and folded it in half and stapled it, and we made a book together. And so we kind of shared the pen in this book. He knew some letters. He knew how to write some letters, and he knew some sounds. And so the book just was kind of a predictable pattern book. I like licorice. I like airheads. I like gumdrops. And he kind of knew how to spell like. So anything that he could do in this book, I allowed him to do it. And then when he was like, I'm tired, then I said, I'll just write that word. What do you think it starts with? And so we kind of shared the pen in this book, and he wrote it. And then it was so cool because when kids are really young, there's not a lot of books that they can read, but he could read this book because he was the author. He had written the words. He had thought up the words. He had written the words with me. And so this was a book that he could keep in his little library and read. And so we wrote lots of books with my kids about candy, about a beach, about fish, about jokes, about snakes, whatever they wanted to write about. And they knew a lot about some of these things. So they were actually really good books. So that's another thing that you can do is kind of use their interests and write with them, and then they'll have a book they can read. Another thing that you can do is give them easy books. It's if they're just starting to read and they can read, but they're kind of just not interested. In our classroom, when I taught first grade, we would just call these dessert books. They were just kind of easier books, and they were fun, and they didn't require a lot of thought. And those were ways to just have them reading without it being a struggle. Reading should not be a struggle all the time. If the book is too hard, then the parent should be reading the book to them. Something else that I did with some of my reluctant readers in my classroom and my own kids is that when we were reading a book and my kids could read, if they said, oh, and they were kind of putting up a fight before the book, I would say, oh, well, let's just take turns. You don't have to read the whole thing. Let's take turns. Do you want to read first, or do you want me to read first? And by doing that, I was giving them a choice. I was giving them control, and I was fine with reading some. That way I was modeling good fluency and how we use expression when we read, and then they would read a page. And so it was not a fight. The fight was over. Some other things that we did, and I took this from a Brave Writer or Brave Learner, I can't remember, but she would do the poetry parties, and maybe you've heard of those. You can search those on the internet, but she would do poetry parties where like once a week she would do a poetry. I think she would do a tea party, but we're not really into tea. So we would do a popcorn party or a poetry Pepsi party. And it was a special time where we would put out all of our poetry books like Shel Silverstein or Emily Dickinson or, some of the classic poets as well. And we would just I would read some of those to them, and then they would choose some that either they would read or they wanted me to read to them. Some funny ones, some silly ones, all different kinds. But if you pair something that's a struggle with something that's nice, like popcorn or Pepsi or a little muffin or something like that, it becomes much more palatable. Some other things we did was during reading time, we would maybe say, let's go lay down. I'll rub your back while you read, or I'll rub your back while we take turns. Let's go read in the fort over there. We can build a little fort with the cushions and get underneath the blanket and make it cozy and get the flashlight out or the headlamp or whatever. Or pair it with a snack. Whenever I paired anything with a little bit of food for my kids, it was a game changer. And the last thing to get your kids motivated is if you read a book, some things are easier than others, but let's say you're reading books, nonfiction about animals, then visiting a park where you're sure to see those is a nice way to motivate kids, or a museum where they have certain things that you've read about, or do some kind of field trip where you can see the things that you are reading about. Anytime you can pair it with a real life experience or some kind of activity, that makes it much better as well. So for motivating your child, if a child's resistant, those can give you some ideas of what to do. The second question that we hear a lot is, my 4-year-old is showing interest in reading and writing. Where should I start with instruction? We hear this quite a bit. And obviously, if your child is showing interest in those things, you definitely want to foster that and get it going, right? Without going crazy and being like, yay, let's pull out all of our letters and let me start drilling you on sight words. No, not that. But once your child starts to show some interest in reading, the thing that I would start with is just their name. And that would be knowing the letters in their name, knowing their first letter. Like with my kids, I would say, oh, there's the F. That's your letter. There's your letter. And then they would be able to find it everywhere if we were, out on the road, or they saw their letter on a billboard or whatever. But you can start with their name, just their first name, and write it out. Write the first letter of their name capitalized, and then the rest of their name in lowercase letters. As they begin to write, I would teach lowercase letters. That's what they are going to need, that you can write them faster than writing a bunch of letters that have sticks like capital letters. Capital letters are tons of sticks, and it's just sticks everywhere. But when you learn lowercase letters, you can loop around, and everything you can almost do with one fell swoop, like just make the letter real quick and move on. So their name, you can start with the capital letter and write the rest, and then just put that on a piece of paper, and they can learn the letters in their name and how to write them. They can trace it with marker, they can make it with Play-Doh, you can help them. They can trace their name with their finger. There's so many different options. Chalk, I'm sure you can think of more. Another thing that you can do is find some kind of video that they love to watch. My kids learned with The Letter Factory by Leapfrog. I know that's a little bit older. I'm sure there's newer ones too, but that's one. And also Jack Hartman videos you can find on YouTube. Those are some very catchy tunes, and my kids loved those and learned letters and sounds, including vowel sounds, by watching those over and over and singing them, and just the repetition helped them learn their letters really quickly. Another idea you can do for a child who's showing interest in reading is make their own ABC book. Now, there's lots you can buy, but when I was teaching beginning reading, we would take a book, just pieces of paper. We would make sure there was enough for 26 letters of the alphabet, and we would staple that and make a book with that. We would do a letter and then a picture. And the picture was whatever they could think of that started with that letter sound. So let's say for P, they might come up with P, 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 and then they say pumpkin. And you say, oh, yeah, that's pumpkin. So let's put that in your book. Or they might say, can you think of a word that starts with that's the sound the letter H makes? And they might say Hayden. And then, okay, let's draw Hayden's picture in here. Whatever they come up with, whatever their connection is, let them choose what picture goes on each page, and you help them draw it, or you draw it and then they color it. It's kind of just a quick thing. You can actually make the entire book and just start filling in letters they know as they learn them. You don't have to start with A. If he knew Z for zebra, then we could add that at the end. So as you're reading the book, there might be some blank pages, but eventually they will all be filled up with their associations for how they think of a sound and what they think of when they hear that sound. I hope that makes sense. Something else I just mentioned a little bit ago is just writing books together. And that's something that you can do too once they're interested. Another book that Hayden and I wrote was just called A Beach. And so he just wanted to put things in the book that he would see at a beach, and he thought them up. And so the first page said a crab. And so he wrote the word a, and I wrote crab. And then we drew a picture together. We had the words on the left side of the book and the picture on the right, which helps your child move left to right across the pages, across the book. And you can help them read that. And he just added whatever he wanted in there. A crab, a family. He just named off things that he would see at the beach. Once your kids know some letters and sounds, there's lots of little books. You can even buy them on Amazon, like Bob books or little phonics books. They're not super exciting as far as storyline goes. So these are ones that, they don't have a good story. They're not for comprehension. They're decodable books. They're phonics books. Their pure purpose is just helping kids sound out words that they've learned the sounds to. I know there's parents who use easy board books. Yummy Yucky was another one that we read. There were a whole bunch by that author, big and little, and that just was teaching them opposites without saying, oh, I'm teaching you opposites. And those were easy to read. The pictures helped, and those kind of taught kids how to use pictures and point and move left to right across some of these board books. So those are options that you could use for a 4-year-old as well, who is interested in reading and writing, but you're not quite sure where to start. The third question we had from a parent is, my child is smart and interested in reading, but he is so energetic. It's difficult to get him to sit still. And he is bored with typical books. How do we structure our day to get some reading done? So, and I had 2 active boys. And so there were a lot of things that we did to be able to get some reading in without just sitting there like at a desk. I've said this before, but exercise first is the key thing, no matter what it is. We used to go for a bike ride for an hour or two, totally exhaust my kids. If you are able to get them swimming in the mornings, swimming is so exhausting. Just getting outside, getting some fresh air, getting trees and sunlight and all things nature in your eyes, in your face, and getting some of that energy out first is the best way that we found to get anything done during the day. Something else that you can do is to include read alouds that are quality books while he is building with Legos or standing on a balance board or standing on his head, as long as he's quiet, or coloring or doing things that are halfway quiet, as long as they're able to be a little silent so that they can hear the book, their little bodies moving back and forth on a balance ball or whatever keeps their brains active and listening to you. Even sitting in a tree or on the top of a slide on the swing set. We've done all those places, and I'm sure some of you have too. Writing books together, this is another place where that fits in that I've already talked about. Even a kid who's a little bit older would love to write a book. One time, my son Forrest wrote a book about a snook, like the fish, and he had crazy things. He was so interested in finding all of the pictures online and then writing the words. And then I helped him type it and just getting him to write things that he was interested in. I did some, he did some, but he was able to sit still because it was a topic that he really loved. Taking your spelling and everything outside, if you can. You can write in the sand. I mean, we live by the beach, or the dirt or the snow. You can do handwriting outside. You can write with chalk on the sidewalk, on the fence, on the house. If you allow that, you can write with chalk anywhere. You can even take a wet paintbrush and dip it in water, and they can write on wood or fences or anything just with water. We listened to books in the car sometimes on just trips to wherever we were going, field trips, grocery store, vacation, whatever, anything, especially classics at that point, especially ones that are narrated that sound like the characters. I think we did listen to Narnia one time. My family's weird. We didn't like it. I think we're the only homeschool family ever that doesn't like Narnia, but it was entertaining because the characters sounded like the character. It wasn't just someone reading the book. Having your child read joke books and then telling those fun and gross facts. There's books about that. Some of them are nonfiction. They're just disgusting body books about body noises and all of that. That helps a child read, and they're short little snippets. It's nothing very long where they have to sit down a long time. And then any kind of nonfiction book that they're interested in. My kids were always very interested in survival things and like snakes and animals, but other kids are interested in airplanes. And so anything that really gets their interest can help them settle down a little bit too. But the exercise is super key. It was for us anyway. So I highly, highly, highly recommend that you find some way that you can get exercise every day. If you have active kids, at least an hour before you start your day, it makes all the difference in the world. So I hope that helped you with some of the questions that a lot of homeschool moms have about how to get started teaching reading. Those are just common questions that we've come across or that someone has asked us. And if you have any questions, you can contact us at thehomeschoolwell.com/contact. We also have mommy classes about reading. You can check out some of our other blog posts and podcasts about those things. All of that is on our website. And we also have lots of kids classes now in our membership. Some of them are writing these little books about animals, like I talked about. Some of them are handwriting classes. There are read aloud classes where we're reading aloud and your kids can draw along with us. So you can check out any of those and get some ideas. Or if you need a break, you can park your child right in front of that class for 10, 20, 30 minutes and have them learn something while you are making a phone call or taking a quick nap or whatever you need. But be sure to check those out. You can go to thehomeschoolwell.com/classes for more information. We always like to close with a Bible verse because that is what keeps us going here. And today I'm reading from Proverbs 31, verses 25 and 26. And this part of the Bible sometimes can maybe get a bad rap because as moms or women, we try to compare ourselves to this woman who seems so perfect. But really, we are all just trying to do our best. And if you're listening to this, you're trying to do your best as well. You're trying to get your questions answered about reading, and you're trying to understand your child better. And that is what we just do as moms. So this verse, starting with 25, says, "She is clothed with strength and dignity, and she laughs without fear of the future. When she speaks, her words are wise, and she gives instructions with kindness." I was thinking about this verse as I was talking about these crazy kids, these littles who were not wanting to read or bouncing around everywhere and couldn't read. And I think of this mom who gives her instructions with kindness. She is wise. Her words are wise. She understands her kids. She knows their strengths. She knows what they need. And she has strength and dignity and laughs without fear of the future. And this is the woman I want to be. I don't want to be scared of the future. I want to laugh at the future and think of it with good times to come, and even good times to come tomorrow when I'm working with my kids. So we hope that that inspires you today. And again, if you have any questions, please reach out to us and we can help you find answers for sure. thehomeschoolwell.com/contact.
Are you looking for a place to connect with other homeschool moms? Well, we have a platform where members gather to support each other throughout their homeschool journeys. Moms just like you. We even have a spot for your kids to interact online in privacy and safety. So head over there and start creating community. thehomeschoolwell.com.